Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, one of the co-hosts and analysts on Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live today from North Carolina, not the United States Capitol, but I've been traveling quite a bit, and hopefully we'll be back to a more normal schedule after the summer months. But today I just wanted to, before we bring in a guest, kind of open up last closing arguments of the Trump trial. Rishi Sunak may be in trouble in Britain. He's making some changes there. We've had, a lot of turbulence politically. Biden slipping in the polls. So we're going to see here as we get into the summer what's going to happen with this election, and President Biden calling for a debate in June, which I think signifies the fact that he does want to make sure he can try to climb back up in the polls. At the end of the day, I'll open up with the fact that I hope everyone took some time to thank our soldiers who fell for our country and lost their lives, paid the ultimate price. And wherever we are living under the blanket of freedom, we're grateful for those who served in our military and died for our nation. As I close out this introduction, I would be remiss if I did not talk a little bit about our AI Fireside Chat Summit with John Chambers, which was also aired on WPTF. It was a great opportunity to talk about AI, its future, the potential of creating new economic opportunity, many new trillion-dollar companies coming out of the woodwork. Speed to market to innovation will increase, and while that happens, jobs will be lost much faster. But from John Chambers, who ran Cisco, seems to be positive that AI is going to be a new separate economy like the cloud across all sectors, and all of us better move fast and incorporate it into our business strategies, our local government strategies, our smart city strategies, because if we don't, we could be left behind. Found that to be interesting to hear that from the godfather of tech, John Chambers, who acquired 180 companies over 20 years, made 10,000 millionaires, and I would say is pretty good at predicting things. So with that, we're going to continue that discussion in the week, bring in different experts. But let's go ahead and get the show started with our guest. I'm going to have to leave a little bit early, but I'm going to be here for a few minutes. Mark, go ahead and bring on our guest.
No problem. Glad to bring on our guests. And we know that one of the issues that a lot of people have been talking about lately is security. I know that you and I remember that when we grew up, if there was a conflict, a lot of times we would just settle it with our fists. There might be some knives or there might be some other things involved. But it seems like right now, a lot of times when there is conflict, guns are involved. And a lot of times police are having to deal with that. And in that sense, I know that we just had an incident here in Durham not that long ago that involved some gunplay, and definitely it seems like police officers and others have to be engaged in that space and learning how to deal with it and all along those lines. As a matter of fact, I just saw that yesterday a man was shot and hospitalized after a gunfight in a Durham parking lot, and that was something that took place. And of course, we remember a couple of weeks ago there was an incident at the Durham police station, and of course these are incidents that happen around the country and all along those lines. You know that is some of the work that Yoli is doing, and Yoli has definitely been involved not just here but in other parts of the world as well. So that's what I was going to ask him, is about this whole notion of conflict resolution and all along those lines, because I know he's big into that whole thought and everything. But it does seem, and I think that even Steve, who is a Morrisville City Council person, in addition to being involved with our network and everything, would agree that it seems like we're seeing more and more people that are reaching for their guns, and a lot of times, whether it's in corporate America or whether it's in schools or whatever, a lot of times people don't know how to handle it, and that's where somebody like you comes in hand and teaches these folks how to handle these situations. So I'm glad that you were able to make it, and if you can talk to us a little bit about what's going on here, because it does seem like a lot of times folks are reaching more for their guns, and sometimes we don't even know how they got the guns because they're supposed to be in lock boxes and things of that nature. Hopefully that's what their parents and others are keeping them in, but it does seem like it's becoming more prevalent in my mind and everything, but maybe I'm overreading the situation. But what is your take on what's going on, Yuli? We don't hear you, Yuli. I'm not sure what's going on with your mic or what's happening there, but I don't hear you. I heard you last time.
Maybe he's on mute.
Still don't hear you. So let's see, because we might have to adjust the mic or see what's going on there and everything. Because I know I heard you when we tested it last week, but I don't hear you at all. There we go. Say something, Yuli. Don't hear you now at all still. Because I don't know, is the mic
Might be in settings. I'm going to run, Mark. I'll be back. I got to go get ready for the TV.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'll be back next week. Thank you.
Yeah, Yuli, I still don't hear you, so hopefully we can get the mic situated and everything. So I'm still trying to get you adjusted. I don't know if you got to go down into your settings, because I know we heard you yesterday or the day that we tested, and it came through clearly and everything, but I'm not hearing you at all right now. And yeah, so I don't know what's going on there. So I don't know if you want to try a different mic or.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, great. Yes. So good to see you again.
Good to see you again as well.
As you say, my name is Yuli, and I've been in security and contact command more than 24 years. I would actually, I don't want to talk about how people getting the guns.
Right.
I would like to talk about how people perceive the guns.
Right.
As you mentioned, I was traveling and living in different countries. I was serving military in Israel many years ago. I was working security. Then I moved to Kenya, Africa, and I spent in Africa working 17 years and living 12 years.
Mhm.
When I teach people about self-defense,
Right.
first of all, I want them to understand what is weapon.
Mhm.
And unfortunately here, I also want to talk about people who do have license, because they think that once I have a license, I can do anything. No one can hurt me. No one can injure me. And here the big issue: we not perceive correct the distance between you, who have a gun, and the opponent. And when we come back to the physical training, and even when I teach law enforcement, I'm explaining, guys, the distance is very important factor. I'm not even talking about liability issues, and we can see it even now, police struggling around the world with all the liabilities problems. Sorry. The issue is about the gun that from the small distance, even 10 or 15 meters away, even if I have the legal right, and I have the weapon, I still cannot use it as a self-defense, because there's not enough distance between me and the opponent. So first of all, you need to understand what is weapon, how does it operate, and then the distance between you and the opponent. And only then we can teach people self-defense against the firearms, because without this small understanding, no self-defense will help.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. I know that I've got a cousin that's a GBI officer. He's down there in Georgia, and I know that even during the George Floyd incident, we talked about a lot of the ways that police officers handle incidences. And I know that one of the things that advocates for our youth and just people in general say is to respect law enforcement and all along those lines, and to not really try to challenge them, because we do know that sometimes people will want to challenge the law enforcement and everything. But I do know that part of what you have talked about is how law enforcement can do a better job, but not just law enforcement, but even in corporate America, because you do work with corporate America as well. And sometimes we don't even recognize the signs in corporate America when somebody may be triggered for whatever reasons and everything. So could you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yes, let's talk about right now law enforcement and security professionals. So there are two main issues. One, problem number one is the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem two is the work power, number of employees, number of people who serve. You have to understand that beyond the financial part, to send someone for training, to get good knowledge in training, you need two people. You need one person who is in the field, and the second person who learning self-defense or contact combat skills. And it's very problematic. Not only U.S., it's, I would say, in most places in the world. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to adjust the correct skills, the correct training to the division. Let's say if we talk about traffic police, so we will concentrate how they should deal with situation when when they stop someone on the road, what to expect from the person. He can be drunk, he can be violent. So what skills he have to apply to do the job in the best way, and not to be again accused in overusing power. If we're talking about detective, there are different skills. So we take police officer for the very short period of time, and we also consider that not everyone have the right fit level. Some people might have experience in contact combat before in their life, school or after school, and someone never did it, or maybe someone did it only limited time. So we're taking all these components together, plus psychological fact, and we give dedicated tools to police officer how to deal with situation management and de-escalation in the right moment and the right scenario.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know one of the things that people have been talking about, and actually I was with some cousins, kids, and even my well, actually, it was my nephews as well as some other relatives and everything, even my brother's girlfriend's daughter and everything is in the teaching profession and all along those lines. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about burnout from various first responders. So how do you deal with that? And what are some of the ways that you're trying to get people to prevent this burnout? Because we know that definitely during the pandemic and even afterwards, there was a lot of burnout in not just law enforcement, but in the teaching profession and even in the hospital professions and a number of other folks where folks were not able to deal with the stress probably as much as they needed to. So I know part of your work is also dealing with burnout prevention for first responders. So could you talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, I would say that we forgot how to communicate. Let's call uniform people, doctors, nurses, law enforcement. They all wear some kind of uniform. So part of communication is also de-escalation, aggression, and stresses. Let's talk about, again, police officer, and then I can talk about even nurse or doctor. Sorry, let's start with hospital, healthcare. So there's a situation, a person come to the emergency room, spend a lot of time, and of course he gets frustrated, maybe he gets verbal aggression, and the nurse calling police officer or security officer. When these people arrive, they arrive in representing body language that's showing authority, showing commands. They unfortunately forget that that person that started the verbal aggression might have something in his life happen before he started the aggression. His child gets sick, he was busy in his work, he was travel, he just came back from a broad business trip, and then his child gets sick, he taking him to the hospital, he did not sleep 48, 72 hours. So when we deal with a situation, we forgot this factor that everybody is human being. If we change this mindset of people who wearing uniform and to look at the person as he is, as a person, as a human being, and try to understand why he behaved like this and what type of aggression he presenting, because there are several types of aggressions, then these people have enough tools, and we give them these tools, how to manage situation, how to de-escalate aggression. And of course, both sides, also people who wearing the uniform and also the opponent, the civilians, they can benefit from it by reducing the aggression and stress.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In that sense.
Besides of that, let me just add you one more thing on the personal level. If we talk about how people can reduce the stress after working hours, the same people who wearing uniform, it's really depends. Very personal. Some people would like to read the book. Some people go for fishing. So I will always recommend to people that I'm trained or corporates when I'm talking to, you should find your own thing that will help you to mitigate the stress, to reduce the stress. Think about what you like, and then do it at least once a week.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Do what you like and keep that engaged and everything. I know that we've been seeing a lot of incidents, as I mentioned, some of it happened here in Durham, but we've also known that there have been nightclubs, there have been other things that people are going to that they're going to enjoy, and they might not even be expecting the attack. I mean, you had mentioned that you have some ties from Israel, and I know the folks that went to that were not expecting that attack and all along those lines. So definitely, what is your advice for folks that are caught in a situation where they need to have those active shooter survival tactics? Because unfortunately, it does happen too often, and a lot of times I don't know that people even know which doors to go to, or whether the clubs or the venues or even the corporations have correct plans in order to deal with those situations should they take place. So how do you involve people and get some sort of survival plan for an active shooter?
Well, that's a great question, because there was a recent report by FBI, if I'm not wrong. In 70% of the cases, active shooter preparing and planning in advance. Sometimes it's hours, days, sometimes it's even months. So I'm always ask my students, if the active shooter planning and preparing, why don't you? Of course, the preparedness is the most important thing. Security awareness. I'm always advised to my students, when you're going to the place, you have to understand where the exit, where's the entrance, where how easy you can get out. If you travel to other countries, also check different types of risk, not only active shooter. There's also terrorist threats in different places, but mainly it's security awareness. You have to be familiar with the place. You have to be familiar who is around you, your family, your friends, what you're carrying with you. And just releasing course, I don't know if allowed to say it here. It's called Beyond the Basic Active Shooter Survival course, where I'm trying to use also bodyguarding skills. I'm also bodyguard instructor, and I'm diving slightly deeper from original approach, which is run, hide, and fight. I'm trying to explain people what are the other options. I mean, it's not something different from run, hide, and fight. I'm just trying to open every subject deeper, so people will have more tools and more information and possibilities, so they can use it when it's needed. I will give you an example. There's a general advice: if something happened, run, leave everything behind. I would like to people who listen to my seminars or look in my courses, I would like you to know that an item like mobile phone, an item like a water bottle, can be very useful in self-defense if you have to fight back. People need to understand that taking something heavy, trying to fight, not always work, because someone can be stronger, someone can be not as strong. So not always you can lift an item. In this course or in seminars, we explain to people, guys, these are the options. This is how you can use it. This is how you cannot use it. This is what you should consider if you're trying to use. And then from there, people just have more options to make the right decisions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think enough corporations are doing enough work? I kind of alluded to it earlier. I know that my brother has worked with at-risk youth, and part of his major and study was in conflict resolution. So do you think that corporations in general are doing enough work with conflict resolution, or is that part of the problem, that we're not learning how to communicate and how to address conflicts, whether they're happening in the workplace or even in our personal lives as well?
Well, if we talk about corporates, there was belief, I think it was published by Forbes magazine, that in 2025, almost 30 million Americans will work remotely. And I think there's not enough or not clear understanding in that this kind of risk on new life after post-COVID situation, where people work remotely and they have desire to work more remotely or hybrid, partly remotely, part in office. I think this risk should be also included in the risk mitigation by every company, and more training, more resources should be involved. We're talking about, again, people who work remotely, some of them restricted to work only from home. They're not allowed to work from coffee shop. Our companies more flexible. So people going out, we're coming back to the same active shooting situation or threat. We come in a situation where well-being of our employees became very important, and companies even advising them to have more fitness in their life, running, jogging, going to gyms. So yes, from the one perspective, whatever happened beyond the office wall, it's not employee company responsibility, but at the same factor, I think it should be more expanded as a part of the corporate risk, simply because if a person going for a run because he work from home or work remotely and he gets stuck in his office, if his house walls all the time and he's stressed, so he need to release it somehow. If he's running or she is running and then something happened on the way to home or on the way to the gym, they need to have enough tools to defend themselves. People who like to walk from public places, they need to know more cybersecurity. They need to know personal security. If I'm going to the coffee shop, I'll always advise where you should sit, what table to choose. Is it next to the window? Is it more inside? Is it close to the exit? Is it close to the washroom? So many factors that can affect employees during and after walking shop. And I think this is quite important to include it into the risk package of every single company.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I know that you also deal with travel security, and there have been, of course, travel warnings that was even during the pandemic. And of course, there are some that exist now, including some of the places that you visited and all along those lines. So what advice do you give for minimizing risk when you're traveling for business? I know that one of our founders is looking at the possibility of moving to Spain in the not too distant future and kind of like spending half and half his time, half there and half here in the States and everything. So what kind of advice do you give for folks when it's coming to traveling for business, including situational awareness and things along those lines?
Well, without diving into the whole spectrum of travel security, just general advices, check political situation, check the hotel, how you book your hotel. If you're using Uber, I always say try to use the taxi, which is ordered by the reception in the hotel or where you stay. Be careful in the airports. Make sure that nobody opens your luggage. Make sure that nobody touch your luggage. There's general advice that I always say. It's nice to be gentle and it's nice to help over people. I don't like and advise people not to help others inside the airplane, like lifting the bag, helping to someone else because he cannot reach. There's enough crew on the plane who can do it. Just remember, once you lift and you help someone, your fingerprints always on this item.
Yeah, that makes sense. What warning signs do you give for folks? And then we might bring in some of our other folks that might have questions as well. But what warning signs do you give for folks in terms of even recognizing that there might be something going on that they need to be aware of or a potential threat? So what kind of warning signs are there that maybe executives and just coworkers need to be aware of?
Well, it's again, it's quite dependent. If we're talking about organization, there's different types of conflicts, and you can recognize them. There's interpersonal conflict, there's intrapersonal conflict, organizational conflict, and intergroup conflict. So there's enough tools how to recognize each type of the conflict, and we're giving also tools how to deal with each of them, because conflict as itself, it's not a problem. Poor management, poor manageable conflict, it's became a problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That poor management and everything. You had earlier mentioned, like I said, I'm gonna bring in some other folks that might have some questions based on their own life and their own experiences and everything. But you had mentioned that sometimes folks are thinking that they need to have fancy equipment. I know way back in the day, folks used to, and I'm going to date myself, try to have nunchucks and all along those lines. But you are actually saying that a lot of the safety items we actually already have, whether that's a phone, a key, or you had even mentioned earlier the water bottle. So is that something that we should be using as part of our self-defense package?
Absolutely correct. Again, don't forget that many people never spend time in martial arts classes, self-defense classes, and you need a lot of time to be well prepared for street fight, for street self-defense. I always say, whatever you have on you, keys, water bottle and mobile phone, according to me, are the best self-defense items. You can use everything around you. You can use business card. You can use credit card. You can use a mug, coffee mug if you sit in a public place. You can use a beer if you're going for the nightclub. You just need to know how to use these items, and you don't even need years or months of training. It's very simple, just using the leverage and your body.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What got you into this particular field? Because I know that you have done work. You mentioned having grown up in Israel, and I know that from my own study of you that you are of, I think, Russian Hebrew background and all along those lines and everything. And also you have spent some time in Kenya. So what got you to even think about this as a field of study and something that you were interested in being involved in?
Well, I was born in Russia, you're absolutely right. And when I was 12, my parents and I moved to Israel. I started martial arts in 1991, if I'm not wrong. And after military, I was working in security sector for many years. There was some point when I would say I get enough from all the riots and all the threats, and I went to. I was CEO of export company. We were exporting agricultural products, fresh cut flowers, and this is how I came up to Kenya. I started a huge project, actually connected continents. I founded the project. We were selling flowers from Kenya as a direct trade to Eastern and Eastern Europe. And then I went back to security in Kenya, because still it's my passion, my desire, and I like it. From there, mostly we train corporates and professionals.
You mentioned some of your work, and I guess it's still now in Kenya. And I know that even Kenya has been, I guess, getting ready to use some of their law enforcement to go help a troubled part of the world, that being Haiti and everything. So just wondering, are some of those officers, some of the officers that you might have trained yourself? Because it does look like, if I remember correctly, that Kenya is sending folks to help that gang-ridden area of Haiti and all along those lines. I think I read that recently and everything. So I was wondering if those were some of the officers that you might have trained that might be going there to Haiti.
This is part of the things that we're training them. It was contact combat tactical skills. But what's interesting that Kenya 5-6 years ago did not recognize what we call a stop violence without violence. Mm-hmm. Did not really recognize the needs of acting without violence. And again, it was everywhere. Most of the countries, if you're going back 15, 20 years, there was no such a term, stop violence without violence. Security used to work with violence. And what I noticed that recently there's a big move and understanding that the conflict can be managed in a different way. But if allowed me to say, beyond training professionals in Kenya, I think one of the biggest achievements and something that I'm very proud of, we was doing on voluntary base. We were teaching kids in slums in Kenya. We have several programs, several projects where we're going to the slums and training girls for self-defense, because many of them unfortunately raped and killed. And we're giving them these necessary tools, how they can defend themselves. One of the project was called Defend Herself. And this is one of the things that's really making me happy.
Sounds like it. Well, I'm bringing in some of my other panelists. They may have some questions for you as well. I know that Jatovie McDuffie, who's in the gaming space, has got a sister-in-law who is in law enforcement as well, and all along those lines. So he's definitely got somebody that is in his family and is definitely involved in law enforcement. And Sasha Starr is actually from Russia as well, and is of Ukrainian descent and all along those lines. But he definitely shares some of that heritage with you. And then we've got Rick Rosner, who is a Mensa person and is over there in California and all along those lines. So I don't know if y'all been following the conversation. It looks like Rick's got a question for you, and others may have questions as well. So Rick, take it away.
So I got 2 comments and then a question. One is, I always try to sit mafia style in a restaurant, which is back to the wall. Nobody can come up behind you. Eyes looking out, at the entrances, and just so you have a sense of what the last episode of The Sopranos, a major character, a mafia guy, forgot that rule and sat in the middle of a restaurant with terrible consequences. So that's thing one. Thing two is, I think you want to know, what parts of other people's bodies you can hit that will hurt them. But I think you also want to know, I'm bad at fighting. And so like, I want to know places where I can hit somebody else, even if my aim is bad. Like the nose seems easy, the knees seem easy, but I don't know because I'm bad at fighting. And then thing three is a question for you. I think earbuds are terrible because they take you out of your surroundings. Do you have any comments about earbuds?
I absolutely agree about earbuds. It's distracting a lot. You're also losing focus on environment. Back to where to sit. Yes, sitting next to the wall and looking at the entrance. Sometimes it may be good and may be safe. However, it's very depends what type of the wall is it. What's beyond the wall? What is behind the wall? Is it glass wall? Is it strong wall? Is it paper wall? There are so many factors that you need to collect. About fighting. So again, I prefer to say that I'm not teach people how to fight. I teach people. I explain to people how to defend. And the most important lesson that I always say that when you think, okay, I need to know how to fight. Always think that your opponent can fight better than you. We always trying to surprise the opponent. In most cases, we use pressure points. And that's why I'm saying that the mobile phone, a key, it's amazing tool for this pressure point.
Along those same lines and everything, it's just kind of like piggybacking on what Rick was saying. I know that, like I said, my cousin is a GBI officer, and I do know that there was this notion that back in the day, and then I think police have gotten away from it, of like shooting for the kneecaps, but all along those lines. But as my cousin told me, that's a horrible mistake because folks' adrenaline may just continue, and then you may wind up being in more trouble than you would have been, and all along those lines. So I think the common thing is now to shoot for the center mass, and if you're shooting for the center mass, you may be taking the person totally out, and you may be killing them, but then you're going to stop that whole adrenaline rush and all along those lines. So what is your take on that, and is that a correct philosophy? Because I know that came up, I think, even during the George Floyd and other cases as well.
Well, you mentioned handcuffs. So one of the skills that we give to officers is how to use handcuffs for arresting and restricting person without making any physical damage. There was several demonstrations that we made in different countries, and it's usually I'm asked several police officers to apply arrest as part of the demo. With two conditions: the suspect cannot fight back, cannot punch, cannot kick. At the same time, police officer cannot use force; he cannot make any injuries. And what we see that without proper training, it takes almost 5 minutes until 4 or 5 police officers will put handcuffs on the suspect. And again, we're talking about demonstration, and take the suspect to the car without causing any injuries. And after 2 or 3 minutes of instructions how to apply our skills, we saw a huge difference because one police officer, by proper situation management and communication, can apply the same arrest to take the suspect to the police car in around 1 minute, even 40 seconds.
Hey, just along those same lines, and I know Jacoby and others may have some questions, like I said earlier, and in that space, but do you feel, just as a security specialist, because we do know that there have been a number of protests, including some that have maybe had some anti-Semitic views and everything along those lines, but do you feel that there has been a overzealousness by some of the folks in law enforcement, whether that was with January 6th way back when, or with some of these protests that are going on our college campuses? Or do you think that they are being handled as best as they can be in these situations that may be very volatile?
I would like not to comment on this. What I would like to say, I'll go back to our conversation that people who wear a uniform sometimes forget that in front of them also a person that something brought him to this psychology mindset where he acts in a certain way. So yes, people have to be more respectful. one thing I can say about law enforcement, that again, situation management during such difficult problems like riots or demonstrations, it's the most important factor, where police officers know how to communicate with each other and with the crowd.
How important do you think it is? Because one of the things that I really admired with Occupy, and like I said, I was part of that, was that there was some communication with law enforcement. So, in a lot of times, the law enforcement already knew where the protest was going to be, the route of the protest, and they might have even known some of the fringe elements to be aware of, and all along those lines. So how important do you think it is for folks that are organizing protests or demonstrations to coordinate with the law enforcement while trying to get their message out, whether that's a message to the right or a message to the left? But how important do you think it is to have coordination with law enforcement?
I think it's very important, because then both parties also know about what allowed, what is not allowed, which geographical area might be used for this kind of protest. I think it's very helpful tool. And again, we talk about not only communication between both parties, but also several people involved in this communication. So both of the sides, they always know who they should talk to in case something going wrong.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, Rick.
Would you recommend that people get experience sparring and a little bit of grappling? Like if when I was a kid, my ideas of what would happen when you get hit in the face were based on movies and TV, and it's usually really bad. But then I was in situations where I got hit in the face a few times and it wasn't so bad, and it was important to know that, I felt.
I would say that yes, it's nice to know that. However, again, we're talking about mitigation. There's a way how you can see what will happen next. If someone approach you, and it usually starts with the push, it starts with the talk, and then there's a way how you can mitigate this aggression, or how you can prevent or even predict what will happen next. People ask me, Yuli, and what if someone punch you without pushing you? Well, the answer is very simple. If someone wants to punch you, in many cases, he will come behind you when you don't see him. He will punch you. He will hit you. If someone come in front and he's trying to escalate aggression, in most cases, he will tell you something. It will be verbal abuse, or he will push you, or he will grab you, because then he wants you to respond to his action. And then we can see this level of aggression escalation, because he grabbed me, I grab him, then he pushed me, I push him, he punched me, and it's going higher and higher and higher. So there's certain ways. We're also using traffic light system, where I can understand the distance between me and my opponent, and in every single stage of this traffic light system, I know what should I do, what kind of skills I should apply. Is it talking? Is it preventing? Or just going away? Or as you say, as a no result, even maybe fight.
Yeah. Hey, Jacoby, any questions you've got? I know that, like I said earlier, your sister-in-law is in the law enforcement in the same area where Rick's at over there in LA, and all along those lines. So any questions you've got based on your own work life, as well as your wife, because your wife is in the nursing profession as well?
No, I was just enjoying the conversation and listening on.
I got to say, LA is a good place to be for fighting, because everybody wants to be in the movies. So nobody wants to get hit in the face. So there's not a lot of in bars. Like on the East Coast, I think it goes to fists faster than on the West Coast. And West Coast, it's a lot of slap fighting and you're getting your friends to hold you back. I think East Coast is more dangerous than West Coast.
Hey, along those same lines, I know one of the things that you talk about, Yuli, is this notion, because I know a lot of times when we think about security and about self-defense, a lot of times it is partner-generated self-defense. But it looks like one of the things that you talk about is that you can learn self-defense, and you don't necessarily need a partner even when doing some of these training moves. So can you talk a little bit about that as well? Because I know a lot of times, whether it's Krav Maga, because I actually have a friend that's involved in that, or whether it's some of the other self-defense practices, a lot of times they are partner driven, but it sounds like you're saying that we can do a lot of this stuff solo and individually as well.
It's very interesting that you mentioned it because I was not planning even to talk about it. So during the COVID, as many of us get stuck in houses, I was in Kenya. I unfortunately closed my beyond the professional training. I used to have also 7 schools, martial arts school for Krav Maga and Contact Combat. Unfortunately, I closed the school because again, COVID lockdown. And then I created a course, online course, where people can learn basics of self-defense through fitness. The course designed in a way where you can do it in very limited space, 2 meters by 2 meters, or you can, I don't know how many in foot, I'm still trying to convert it. But it's very limited space where you can use surrounding objects for self-defense, for training of self-defense. You don't need partner. And we're learning the skills through the fitness. I just want to go slightly back for what you're talking about, fighting and not fighting. One of the best tools that I recognize through all these years of training people, it's raising hands up, because some people perceive raising hands up, it's like surrendering, giving up. However, it's absolutely, it's not that. When you're raising hands up in front of opponent, and we're talking about where the violence is not physical violence, when he's not punching me, he's not kicking me, he don't have knife, he don't have gun. Raising hands gap giving you so many things. One, you de-escalate aggression. Two, it's giving you time, 2 seconds, to understand where you're standing. You can look at the awareness, what you have next to you, where you can go, where you can run, what you can use. And of course, it's opening possibility for conversation, because if someone push you very strong, he perceive, his mindset say, okay, now this person will push me back and this is what I want. However, instead of this, if you're raising hands up, he's surprised. And this surprise effect is very powerful. Powerful not only street fight, but also back to the law enforcement, back to the professionals, back to the healthcare. And I was working in security in hospital in Israel in early 2000s. And I saw how aggression can escalate very easy and very fast between the patients, nurses, and families. Raising hands up, it's one of the powerful tools that people don't think about it. And when you asked me what are the best self-defense, I would say, I will repeat again, your keys, water bottle, mobile phone, because it's always with you, and raising hands up.
Is there a difference between the way that you train women and children? Because I do know that you are definitely teaching some of these vital survival skills to those demographics. But is it all the same, whether it is men and women and children, or is it different things that you might teach the women that you don't teach the men, and the same with the children?
I would say it's this way. Everyone have the right to defend himself. I not particularly train kids. I train, I would say, 20 years old and above. But yes, again, back to your question, everyone have the rights to defend themselves. There is no certain skills that woman or man can do that an hour cannot.
Have you noticed any changes in levels of aggression since COVID, either due to, I don't know, COVID messing up people's brains, or just because we were locked up for a year and people got stir crazy?
Well, again, we're talking about like almost 40% of people working remotely or hybrid remotely. Many of them spend less time or used to spend less time in public. Now they're going more out. And here we talk about also something we did not mention before, that domestic violence started to increase during the COVID and post-COVID. So people work at home, sometimes also both of the spouses working from home, husband and wife, kids coming from school, teenagers shouting, running around. So of course the emotions going out, the stress coming out. So we see more domestic violence, not necessarily physically, but also verbally abuse. And here, this is part of the things that corporates should include in the risk assessments and training situations. And of course, I would like to also to add that home security became also an issue, because if before we used to work from offices and nobody at home and someone breaking in, okay, we lose some value things. But today, if someone breaking into your house and you're still in the house, there are different type of threat that eventually can also go to the corporate, because again, if your employee have a business meeting or preparing for business meeting and he was involved in home robbery, the corporate growth is in risk as well.
How important is communications? Because you kind of alluded to that earlier, and I do know that that's something that we've heard a lot of people talking about during COVID and even before COVID. So, in terms of de-escalating situations, do you think that we are learning enough interpersonal skills and communication skills in general?
According to the statistic of how much people spend time with your mobile phones and social media, unfortunately, we're not invest enough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We need to do more investment in that sense. Rick?
Yeah, I think most of us have occasionally seen a couple fighting in public and want to do something, and there doesn't. Do you have any tips on either doing something or not, or what to do if you see, a man and a woman like really going at it, either physically or verbally?
You mean as a third party?
Yeah,
If
Yeah,
there's
like
some-
it seems
someone
like a no-win situation. Like you can't do anything. It's not going to go well for you if you try, or them if you try to do something.
Well, again, I don't like to advise people. I never saw what they should do. I can only talk about myself. If I will see people, as you mentioned, man and woman fight, I will definitely interact. But again, there's a way how you can interact. You can come, you can shout, you can try to split them by force. Using again pressure points, which is very effectively and surprise, much more effective versus just trying to split people by force, because then you can be also injured.
That makes a
So
lot of sense.
you should know how to do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Sasha, any questions you've got as well? I know we got the Ukraine, Russia, China show later on, but as I said earlier, y'all have some shared heritage, even though he is a younger gentleman, but he definitely has some of that shared heritage in terms of being from Eastern Europe and also having some of that Israeli ties as well and everything. So I didn't know if you had any questions also.
My question would be about you suggested about sitting in a restaurant, mafia style, at the corners and so on. So I'm wondering if all people would do that, the restaurants will lose all their business because there will be no one sitting in the middle. So what restaurants owners should do?
Well, that's an interesting question. Never thought about restaurant owners. I teach people how they can be better prepared. I don't have answer for this, to be honest. Again, people come to me because they want to know the skills, how they can be better prepared about the restaurants. Maybe they should also think how to invest in better security.
Yeah, good stuff. Tell me, do you find in your experience that some nations or nationalities are more aggressive going in the street fight than others?
No, I don't see. I
Yeah.
cannot significantly say that this nation going more or less into the fights.
Mhm.
Interesting. Definitely, that's an interesting viewpoint. And all along those lines, what's one of the most unique trainings that you've had to deal with, whether it was in Kenya or whether it was just in general? And how many nations have you worked with? Because you mentioned that you spent your life growing up around Russia. You had spent some time in Israel, and now it sounds like you're in Kenya. So I'm assuming you probably had some dealings with the U.S. and the West as well. So how many countries have you worked with directly, and what kind of unique experiences have you had?
I guess the unique experience is the first impression. When you come to teach people, the first perception is denial. Usually people say, we know everything, we don't need to know, we don't need new skills. So the first impression is the most important fact. When you show what are the skills and what are the benefits, this is very interesting experience when you come and you see 40, 50, even 100 people around you, and everyone would like to say, oh, I spent 30 years in martial arts, there's nothing else I can learn. I've been in police on the special forces for my 25 years, there's nothing else I can learn. And then you give them, again, surprise, because we like to surprise people. We like to surprise our opponents. And then you surprise them in a very easy and applicable skills in very short period of time. So, yes, this is kind of experience I'm always see in any country or any new group of people that I'm training, that surprise skills the effect it's wow.
What's the biggest misconception you think people have about, and you probably alluded to some of them, but people have about their own personal security or even their corporate security? So you've been dealing with a number of companies and a number of people. What is the biggest misconception that people have about protecting themselves?
Again, I think they just don't think enough about the risks that exist and available. And we're coming back to the same thing, that after COVID, there are new risks that we never talk about them. So I would say yes. The biggest factor, the biggest problem, that they not consider all the risks that exist.
Well, like I said earlier, and I mentioned it earlier, I do know that Nick, and by the way, I had mentioned you earlier and everything, is looking at being half the time in Spain and half the time here in Durham or the Triangle area and all along those lines. So since you are in that travel space and definitely going around travel and everything, and he's one of the co-founders of the network, what advice would you give to him as he is preparing to travel? He was actually going to be gone earlier, but then he ran into some situations with trying to get the right paperwork and all along those lines. So what advice in terms of travel security would you give Nick and all along those lines?
Keep your phone and case always with you.
Wear a fanny pack so that they don't. In Europe, they have pockets. What do you say, Rick?
Well, my wife and we're all getting older, but I've noticed that like we can't do things we used to do. And I was talking to my wife, saying maybe we should like wrestle each other to work on our balance. So, because whether you're fighting somebody or not, when you're old, if you fall over, it can kill you. Do you have any tips like for older people?
I would say pinch. Pinching, it's a very powerful skill. No one expected, and it's worked amazing. There was I remember a scenario where we were training special forces in Israel, big guys, well trained. And then one of the skills that we're saying, okay, one person trying to choke another, and how we can escape from the situation. So let me ask you a question. Imagine yourself, someone come and choke you, grab your neck and choke you with two hands, very strong. What you think, how you will react?
I'd want to, if I could, I'd want to bite them, maybe. If I've been both the biter and the bitey in situations.
Okay, great. So what happens that over the years that you watch all the Hollywood movies and martial arts movies, there's a certain picture in your brain what you can do, how you can respond, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sitting in your brain. When someone's come to choke you, these kind of pictures, this kind of exercise, just jumping up, and you're trying to respond the same way, even if you never done martial arts. The same thing happened with Attacker. He also saw the same movies. He went to the same self-defense classes. So when he come to attack you, choke you, he expects that your body will respond in a certain way. However, if you're doing something like pinching in the specific places, and there are specific places where and how you can apply it, it came as a absolutely surprise. And it's, I would say, almost 100% of the cases, he will release you and he will jump back, because it's something that people not waiting for.
Jacoby, you had a question?
Of course, Rick wanted to talk about he and his wife rubbing on each other, that wrestling. So since we're at the comedy time, because I had a good question, and this is one of the most important questions, especially since you're in the field. Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris?
Movie director.
Oh. We'll say movie because I'm a Bruce Lee fan, so I always say Bruce Lee. Everybody gets upset and goes Chuck Norris way, martial arts style and everything. So, in your opinion, who would win in that battle? That actual last battle that they had in the movie, Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris?
So I will respond one more time. It's depend on movie director what he will decide.
He's pitching it to the movie director. So guess which one is directing the movie and all along those lines and everything. So yeah, it sounds like they were directed by different movie directors. I think he's tossing it back to you.
You pay for the tickets, so you're making decision.
Good point. Very good point.
Very good point all along those lines. So it makes a lot of sense and everything. Yuli, I know we've been having this interesting conversation. I know we'll be back, I think, with another guest tomorrow and everything. And Steve was here for a brief second, but if you will let folks know how you can be reached and contacted and any courses that you may be offering or anything, even some books or anything else that you want to hype and all along those lines, this is the time for you to do that.
Well, so again, I am on LinkedIn. My name is Yuli Grossman. Anyone can find me. As I said, I'm releasing several courses right now, some of them for corporates and some of them for just for civilians. One of them is active shooter preparedness. As I told you, the name will be beyond the basic active shooting survival. Then it will be travel security. Sorry, and of course, I mentioned you that I have online course for self-defense, which is based on fitness that I created during the COVID. It's called 10 Shadows, so people can find it www.10shadows.com. And of course, as you know, I'm also a speaker. I'm moving around talking to corporates, speaking mostly about how to de-escalate aggression within organizations and how it can impact the organizational growth as well. Because body language communication, it's not only security and safety, it's also customer care and front desk workers, how they can sell more by correct communication, not only certain speeches or certain sentences that they learn in the course how to sell, but also how they can imply body language, the way they should hold the neck, the way they should hold the hands when they're talking to the client. And that can also, of course, impact the sales and the corporate growth.
Sounds good. Nick, any last thoughts or anything before we get ready to head to Ukraine, Russia, and China in about 2 or 3 minutes? But I know you're in that security space in terms of things that you got to deal with your travel.
I think the people that need security are people that come to the United States from other countries. Because when I was looking at the mortality rates in Spain and the average life expectancy in Spain is 84, the US is 77. Gun violence is 6 times greater in the United States than it is in Spain. And it's actually it's less in Morocco than it is the United States. So I think the people that need security training is anybody from Europe or who are moving to the United States who don't realize how bad it really is over here. You know, they just don't have a clue. Anyway, that's my opinion. You know.
What's your
Some of these
thought
other countries, I
know we're getting out the door, but are you having to train a lot of people from Kenya and other places in terms of how to deal with the U.S. when they come here? Kind of what Nick is alluding to.
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Are you having to train a lot of people from other countries about the security threats that they may get when they come to the U.S.?
No, I did not have that experience yet. I had many people who came from US to Kenya because it's very diverse population. There are a lot of expats. So I had many people who live in Kenya or used to come as a travel, as a business, training with me, but not yet.
So I know people with PTSD. Can your training help people reduce PTSD by giving them a greater sense of control?
I can't say that I had such experience training specifically that type of people. However, I do have experience training disabled people. And again, back to my point, everyone have rights to defend themselves. And I was running in Kenya, very small group of people who have different type of disability. I remember one student did not have one hand, and he came to my classes, wanted to learn self-defense. And this is very interesting because, again, we teach people, a person who's sitting on a wheelchair, so he has some limitation, how he can use this limitation or the wheelchair as a benefit in self-defense.
Well, like I'm going to spend half my time in Europe, But when I look at Europe, it looks a lot safer than the U.S. So spending time in the U.S., I go, well, I'm in one of the most, actually the Americas are like the most dangerous continent in the world. I mean, Latin America, Central America, so what I do is I have a list, and some of these don't make the list. I'm glad you made it to our list, because certainly this is something that people do need help. And in my industry, they actually sell kidnapping insurance, because if you go to certain countries, you could get kidnapped. But that's a whole other story. With that, thank our guest, Yuri Grossman, and we will see you tomorrow on World Edition. Stay tuned for the TV show from Kyiv, Ukraine, a place that I want to visit, but not right now, which is Ukraine, Russia, and China, which is coming next on the Pod TV network. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.